All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started because I want to always honor people's time. And I want to just make sure that we get the most out of every time we're together for a Wisdom Wednesday with Coach Wendy. So you're working on your reading too, Portia. Great. All right, so today I feel like we're going to tackle kind of a strong topic, something that's not exactly always in my wheelhouse. It's something that is a little different for me. So I want to start out with, speaking of books, how many of you have ever heard of the book called We Speak Your Names by Pearl Cleage? And I think I've learned that I guess you might see it backwards. But this is a book called We Speak Your Names by Pearl Cleage. It came out back when Oprah Winfrey did this thing called, it was for the youngins and the legends. And so the whole purpose of the book is really for us to make sure that we don't forget people, that we remember people. And one of the best ways that we can do that is by speaking people's names. And so today I kind of want to shed a little light and have a conversation around what's happening with Ahmaud Arbery. And what's really sad about that is it's not even a unique case. Even today, I was reading about another young lady that was innocently killed in her own house in Kentucky, named, I think, Breonna Taylor. And so she was only 26 years old, whereas Ahmaud was only 25 years old. And so our young people are also losing their lives at the hands of police officers and former police officers all the time. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad you're here. We're talking today a little bit about, we're going to talk about Ahmaud Arbery, but I was talking about the book called We Speak Your Names. And I was asking everyone if they've seen or heard of this book, because it's important for us to say people's names. And Portia, I heard that you said that you haven't heard of it, but don't worry, Auntie will make sure that you are aware of it. And if you need to borrow it, you can always borrow it. So let's get a little bit more into the meat of what we're going to talk about. So one of the things that bothers me, and I'm sure that everyone on here has heard about Ahmaud, and we're calling him Maud. So I'm sure most people have heard about what happened with him, that he was a 25-year-old young man who was jogging through a suburban neighborhood in Georgia, and he was actually killed by two white gentlemen. I'm going to be kind and call them gentlemen because they're men. And they said they thought that he was guilty of a robbery. And so they took his life. And this really hurts my heart so much because I have a son who is about 31 years old, and he's a runner. And Freddie has been a runner since high school, and he runs and jogs all the time. And it hurts my heart to think about the fact that he could be a victim. He could become a victim so easily just because of the color of his skin. And not just my son, but I have a grandson, I have nephews, I have cousins, I have friends, and period, just young black men, period, across the board. And whether we're talking about their lives now, or men that have already gone on to glory, or the young men that are still yet to come, we have to care about their lives. We have to make our voices heard, and we have to make a difference. So I personally wanted to step up today and talk a little bit more about what can we do? What can we do individually? What can we do as a community in order to try to help eradicate racism? I want to talk a little bit about that. What can we do? And I was listening a little bit earlier and having a conversation. I can't remember. I was talking to a couple of people this morning. We were talking about the fact that there needs to be a little bit higher responsibility level of holding our police officers accountable. And yes, we do. But what else can we do besides just holding them accountable? And so I have some ideas that I want to share, and I have some conversations I'd like to have with everyone. And yes, it is very sad, Portia, very sad what's going on, because it's your generation. It's the generation of my nieces and nephews and my children that are being affected as well now too. So one of the things that I thought about, how many of you, and show me some love through some emojis or wave to me or something, heard about the challenge that Steve Harvey made on Monday? Anybody? Okay, I don't see. Oh, okay, Sarba, yes, you heard about it. Anybody else heard about it? I'm going to share with you what it is, but I just wondered if anyone else was familiar with or heard about the challenge that Steve Harvey made. Well, I'll share with you. on Monday, Steve Harvey was talking. I don't know what environment it was because I was told about it through a colleague of mine. And he said, I want to challenge all of my white friends to, he said, and then he said, white people, period. He said, to go out of your comfort zone. And hey, Jamin, good to see you. And I'm so glad, Margarita, good to see you. I hear that you heard about what Steve Harvey said. Good. But he wanted to challenge white people to get out of their comfort zone and try to embrace a young black man and be kind to that person. Show them, I'll just say, show them some love, but go out of your way. Be intentional about doing something, because where does racism start? Racism really comes because we prejudge, and it's also a curse because it can happen generationally. We're not born where we're racist. It happens because of our environments. It happens because of the people in our lives. And so if we want to break certain things like that, we have to be willing to go out of our comfort zones. And I personally I have many friends of all backgrounds, but I've actually personally had some of my white friends who've told me I was like their first or only black friend in 2020. I mean, really? But depending on where you're from and depending on where, your background has been, it could be true even in 2020. But it doesn't mean it's too late that we can't change the whole trajectory and the conversation around this topic. So we're going to get into a little bit of the meat of what can we do to make a difference, because I'm a firm believer that there are good people and there are bad people across the board in all ethnicities, in all groups. I totally believe that to be true. And hi, I see that you've joined me. Thank you so much. Hey, Don Shell, good to see you. And just for example, I was looking up the other day, how many of you remember the march? Well, you're probably too young to remember it actually like I can, but you can remember in terms of reading about it, the March on Washington that Dr. King did in 1963. Anybody? Show me some love. Show me a wave or whatever. Anybody that at least remembers reading about the March on Washington with Dr. King. Well, there were close to 250,000 people that attended that march. Did you know that approximately between 75,000 and 95,000 were white? So a lot of times that, we don't read about that. So we have to understand that there are good people and there are bad people across the board, no matter what the ethnicity or the race is. So let's not put everybody in the same bucket, just like we don't want to be put into the same bucket as all African Americans or whatever your nationality may be. Let's not put other people there. So now let's look at a few things. What can we do to make a difference? Does anybody want to type something and show me something real quick that they think they could do to make a difference? I'm going to give you a second. Remember, you guys, I'm learning this whole platform of social media and doing everything online instantly, and that it's a conversation. So I look forward to hearing from you. Yes, Sabra, that's excellent. Having an open conversation is a great start. I think that oftentimes there's miscommunication because people don't have these conversations. And they're actually afraid. They're afraid to broach it because they're not sure how it's going to come across. So yes, having a conversation is definitely a way. Another way would be to use your influence, whether that's through social media, whether that's having a conversation with your family or your friends. Definitely. It says, yes, just continue to love on people no matter what ethnicity. Absolutely. I agree. I am all about that. And so let's make sure then again that we stop and use our influence, whether it's through social media, whether it's through, having conversations around the dinner table, because sometimes it may take somebody that's willing to get out of the comfort zone in order to bring it up at the dinner table. The second way that I want to recommend is look at who's doing something that maybe has a louder voice or a bigger voice or more of I would say, an impact than what maybe you're willing to, or not so much willing, but able to do right now based on where we are. So, for example, when I started learning all about what was happening with Ahmaud, I went out and started looking, okay, who's doing what now that this has come forward? Who's actually doing something about it? And I found a press release that was put together by several organizations, including the NAACP, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Urban League, and National Action Network. There were others that were also involved with it, but they were the main ones that were putting together this press release. So what I decided to do was, I remembered the voice of my grandmother. When I was a young girl growing up with my grandmother, she used to make us join the various civil rights and community organizations. We had to be a card-carrying member. And I know a lot of times people today don't even think that those organizations are valid or necessary. Well, I would beg to differ, because nowadays we almost need them more now than before. Because who would have ever thought that we would be going through what we're going through right now in 2020, after all of the sacrifices that have happened over the generations? So what I decided to do is I went back and I rejoined all those organizations, because I'd been member, but I hadn't, if I'm honest, I hadn't stayed active with my memberships in terms of being paid. And I went back and I joined all of them and paid. And it's not that expensive. Many of them are like $25, $30, $50, and you don't have to join them all, but pick something that you're willing to invest in, so that somebody that has a louder voice that can go beyond what we can do can help to make an impact. So that's the second thing. And then the third and final thing that I wanted to share with you as it relates to what I believe that we can do to make a difference would be around taking the time. Now, this is going to take a little bit more of a sacrifice as well, because you need to take the time to find out who can you write to on the political spectrum that we can hold accountable, like district attorneys, like Congress, like in this case in Georgia. Find out the local politicians that are in that area and take the time. I would say take 15 or 20 minutes, because now with computers, you can Google and find out who you need to send a letter to, and then just put together a quick letter, whether you send it by email if they have that, or whether you actually put a stamp on it and put it in snail mail, and do that, because that's showing that we care, that Ahmaud matters, that we speak his name, and that we're not going to let it just go away, and that we have to make a difference. Hi, good to see you. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. And we can make a difference. We can make our voices be heard that way. So let's recap real quick. If we want to make sure that we're speaking Ahmaud's name, or whoever's, because I was sharing even earlier before some of our people joined us, that there was a young lady named Breonna Taylor that I just read about this morning, who was 26 years old in Kentucky, who was killed by police officers who came into her house, and then they found out they went into the wrong house. Does that sound like deja vu? We didn't hear that before. So we have to continue to do whatever we can while we're holding our police officers accountable and others. So let's recap. Number one, what you can do is use your influence, whether it's through social media, whether it's through dinner time with your family and having that conversation, or just your friends, because we have to help change the conversation and the dialogue if we know people are not speaking correctly. Number two, identify another organization or entity that is doing something that has a louder voice than you do, that you can support in some way. By, if you can't afford financially to send something, maybe you can volunteer. There's maybe something that you can do to help them with the crusade of what they're doing. And then finally, take the time to please stop and write a political person that we have to hold accountable for these situations. Do it for that district or for that area. And then that way it begins to build a following, that they see that people across the country, if not globally, are following this case. So I'm hoping that this is motivating somebody. Show me through a wave or something if this is motivating you to think about, what can you do to help end racism? What can you do to maybe help change the trajectory of what we're going through right now, and how we even matter? We matter, and we have to continue to speak people's names. Yes, every generation must do what it can, and it's our turn. Actually, it is our turn. So thank you so much. I appreciate that comment. So I'm Coach Wendy. I want to thank you again for joining me for another Wisdom Wednesday. Today went a little bit longer than normal because this was to me a very sensitive subject. And I really want to make sure that we don't sleep on this, that we don't just say, oh, somebody else will do it. Oh, somebody else will pick up that baton. No, all of us need to pick up the baton and do something. And we have to make sure we do it now before it, because if we don't do something now, it's going to hit each and every one of our families in one way or another, and we have to care about each other in order to let our voices be heard. So if you want to learn more about what I do or how we can connect, feel free to visit wendygladney.com or seasonofgreatness.com. One of my mantras I always say is healing without hate. It's a choice, it's a lifestyle. Pass it on. So let's pass it on and help someone else today. Thank you so much. God bless. Take care. I appreciate you.